So, this is one of the most important lessons of the year. Does history change? It's just a few slides, so you just need to really listen because I'm going to be referring to this multiple times. So, does history change? The short answer is absolutely it changes. It changes all the time. Let me explain. If a dot was used to represent each thing that has happened in the past, how many dots would you need? Start drawing dots. How many dots do you need for everything that happened in the past? Well, I spent considerable time and I put together these dots. Now, these dots, one dot might be the Vietnam War. And within the Vietnam War, there are many, many stories. So this is just a fraction to represent all the events in history. In fact, arguably, you getting up this morning and walking over to the computer or laptop and starting this class, that's an event in history. Everything that happened in the past is represented by a dot. So then the question is, well, that's not history. Well, it is. It's everything that happened. It's what everybody did everywhere at any time. It's every bill, it's every law around the world for thousands of years. So then you say, well, yeah, but that's silly because nobody cares maybe about you getting up and going over to the computer today. But then it begs the question, okay, what is history? Oh, you say, well, it's stuff that matters. It has to matter. Okay, here's the key. If you say it's what matters, then you're choosing which dots to look at. As soon as you choose which dots to look at and which dots to ignore, you've introduced bias into history. It doesn't mean it's a lie, it's a perspective. So people that think history is like opening up my brain and just dump in all the facts, they don't understand it at all. The most classic case, and we'll look into this more in depth later, is what's happened over this past few months, and that's the Confederate monument question. What do they stand for? The history of Robert E. Lee is the same history, and yet now it means an entirely different thing to some people depending upon which ones you look at. Or I'll pick another example, Thomas Jefferson. Well, Thomas Jefferson was a great man, Declaration of Independence, a founding father. Let's look at those dots of his greatness. Well, no, some would say, let's look at the dots that tell the story of him being a slave owner. And so it's which story. And by the way, neither one of those narratives are lies per se. They're not lies at all. They're telling a perspective. They're ignoring some things to make a point. Why? Because some people today want to emphasize one thing and other people want to emphasize a different thing. You're going to have an assignment where you're telling your own life story, and I'm going to challenge you to do the same thing, to pick different themes or narrative. They're going to be the story of you, both of them, and yet they're going to tell you different aspects of who you are. It doesn't mean you can't come to the truth or an understanding of what happened in the past, but throughout the class, it's going to be about recognizing perspective, context, point of view, purpose. These are the skills for the College Board AP test. These are the skills for watching and figuring out what does fake news mean and which news sources do I look at and which opinions on Facebook or social media do I buy. Context, purpose, point of view, perspective. Doesn't mean all opinions are equal, but it means that they are based upon looking at different bits of information and you have to look deeper. What we'll be doing throughout the year. Biggest emphasis is critical thinking and analysis. So you have a dot for everything that takes place. It's not a fact pile. The past always changes. Again, if I want to make a point for today, I use those things from the past that support my point for today. Now, having said that, you might go, well, how about you as a history teacher? Aren't you going to teach history as it really happened? And maybe parents listening on this, I kind of hope you are. I can't do it. I'm going to choose, even now where we have this sort of reduced time period, I have to choose which lessons do I pick, which things do I leave out. Now, I'm going to do that not in any nefarious way. I'm going to do it because I want to teach the things that I think most matter to 16 and 17-year-old teenagers in Santee today and are relevant to your life. But I'm going to pick the things that I think are important. Doesn't mean they're wrong. It means there's going to be a bias. There are different stories you can tell that would have different perspectives, maybe even on the same issue. And so recognizing that, not cynically, not to say, well, then I can't know what happens, but to recognize that the bias and there's a narrative that's in place. So Voltaire famously, the philosopher, said history is a pack of tricks played on the dead. There's a lot of truth to that. And you have to be wary about what it is that you say about the past and what people say about the past. And I'll again, I don't want to get into all the lessons throughout the year, but this is going to be a theme. In this sense, here's the summary. Because it's impossible to learn all of what has happened in the past, somebody must decide what's worth learning, what matters. Whether a filmmaker, a writer, or a teacher, a decision must be made regarding where in history to shine the spotlight. What matters? Where are we going to shine the spotlight? Which dots are we going to pick? So, this is the key. People in the present use the past for their own purposes. In this sense, all history is modern. So, if you can recognize that when we study history, we're really, yeah, we're talking about the past, but it's because of the perspective on the present. That's the thing that will make it an engaging class for you to understand, and you'll see the relevance to your life. I will be focusing throughout on making sure you understand. Like if we study Andrew Jackson, who cares about Andrew Jackson? What does it matter for today? Which narrative, which version of Andrew Jackson are we looking at? How do we understand who we are in the past? And we'll get into this very much in depth. The AP US History course itself is filled with controversy. It's been in the news 4 years ago. It's been in the news this past year, filled with controversy because of who should choose which things are taught in an AP US History course. Throughout the course, I'm going to be making sure you recognize bias and perspective, you evaluate. These are the thinking skills that last you a lifetime, and I want to make sure you understand in this sense, history is all modern. It feels like it's the past, but it's modern because we're not talking about the Peloponnesian War anymore because we don't even think the Peloponnesian War matters to us, even though it still exists. By the way, that was a war in Greece.